Hi, this is Jason from Effective Dashboards, helping maintenance and reliability professionals get the most out of Power BI. So welcome back to another video, and in this video here we're going to be continuing our look at line graphs and in particular the data labels on line graphs. However, in this video here we're going to be using some DAX to apply some conditional formatting to the highest, to the lowest, and the first and the last values. Okay, so let's get started. So here we've got a line chart here that is showing the overall equipment effectiveness percentage, and we can see we've got the first value, we've got the lowest value, the highest value, and the last value. And you can look at the link below and it explains how I've actually set this up. However, what we want is we want these values here to be a bit more obvious and highlighted. Okay, so we want some data, some points here that's going to call out these highs and lows. And we want the high and the low and the first and last values to be different colours, just to make it really obvious and draw our attention to what these are. So to do that, we've got to use a bit of DAX. So let me talk you through what I've done here. First of all, at a high level, what we're going to do is we're going to use two trends. The first one we can see here is just a trend of our OEE percentage, which we can see here. And we're going to add another value in here, another trend in here, but this trend is only going to show values for 4 data points. The first data point, the highest data point, the lowest data point, and the last data point. Okay, so this is the code that I've done here. So rather than wait for me to type it out, I'm just going to talk you through it, because once you understand the concept, I think you're going to, you find it pretty easy to kind of follow. If you've never used DAX before, you can use this as a template, and it's something to help you understand a little bit more about how you can use DAX for the specific application. So first of all, we're using some variables, and we want to determine what the maximum OEE is and the minimum OEE, and they're both the same calculation here. We're going to find the maximum, max X OEE percentage, and it's going to be over the table, and that table is going to be basically everything that's selected, so all selected OEE. So everything that's selected in here, we're going to go and find the maximum value here, which is going to be this 99.8. The next thing, oh, we've got a little message here, and now I think it's because of that little typo here that I never fixed at the bottom, so let me just fix that. I'd called it OOE rather than OEE. So the next one is going to be to find the minimum value. So exactly the same concept as the maximum value. It's going to go and it's going to find whatever the minimum value of OEE percentage is within that graph, the values in that graph that have been selected. Next, we're going to go and find the first date in the range. So it's going to go and look at what the first date in the x-axis is, and then we're going to go and find the minimum date in the date range, that x-axis. So it's going to be, well, sorry, the last date is going to be the maximum date, and the minimum date is going to be the first date. So once we've got these values, these are the values that we want to display the percentage OEE for. All the other values we want to display blank, and you'll see why that's important in a second. So then below we've got a switch statement. Okay, so this switch statement is going to basically return whichever one of these it evaluates as being true, and it's going to evaluate that for every single data point, and it's going to evaluate the switch statement, and whenever it comes across, the first argument it comes across is going to return it. Okay, so the order of these is important, that's why we're looking for the maximum first, and if the OEE percentage, so if this current value here, right, this OEE, so say it's 99.8%, it's going to start there. If this happens to be the maximum OEE, then return whatever it is, the OEE. Otherwise, move on to the next statement. If the OEE percentage equals the minimum, then return the OEE percentage. If that's not true, then move on to the next point. If the selected value of the date is the first date in the range, okay, so if this value here happens to be the first date in this range here, then great, return the OEE, so return this value. Okay, so otherwise return a blank. And to make it a bit easier to understand what's going on here, I'm actually going to go and add a table in. because I think that will help us just to visualize it so you can see what's happening. And we're going to make sure that the dates display dates values with no. Okay, so what we can see here is this measure is only returning a value if it's the first, the highest, the lowest, and hopefully the last. Otherwise it's blank. Okay, so I think that's actually helping you to get an understanding about what's happening with this other measure that we're going to use. So we're going to take this other measure here and we're going to go and add it onto this values here. So let's go and add that in there. And we can see again, it's got that four values there and it's trying to join them up in a bit of a trend here, which we don't want, but we're going to sort that in a second. So let's go in and start doing some formatting. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go into the shapes and we're going to scroll down, and at the bottom of this section here you can see customize series. And because we've got two measures, we've now got the option to customize each of these individually. So let's select this one here, the min max first last, and let's change that stroke width to 0, and straight away you can see that there's no stroke width here, there's no joining up, there's no line actually, there's just data points. However, we do want to show the marker, so make sure the marker is on, but the marker is just on for this data series here. If we do it for the other one and we switch the marker on, we're going to get a point, or like a marker for every point. We don't want that. We only want a marker for the points which are the first, the last, the highest and the lowest. And of course this measure here is only displaying the first, the last, the highest and the lowest, so that's the only points that we can see here, which is great. Now the other thing is we've got two data labels now for each of these, so we need to get rid of those data labels for one of them. So let's go up to data labels and let's go down again to customize series. Open that up, and we want to hide the data labels, or not show the data labels for the OEE percentage. Okay, so we only want to show the data labels now for those four values that we've selected, which is this one here, the percentage min max first last. Okay, so we're showing the data labels for those, and because there is only data for 4 points, then that's only the data labels we can see. So already it's starting to look a little bit better. We can see that we've got something that's drawing our attention to each one of these key values other than just a label there. So we never had that with the previous approach. That is a lot simpler to execute using the label density, but doesn't give us the same end result in terms of that little dot that's going to draw your attention to it. So next we're going to go and we're going to get rid of this this value at the top here, because we can't actually see, it doesn't give us much benefit because we can't actually see this value here, though we can see that that's a different color to the actual trend itself. It's sort of darker blue. We're going to change that in a second. So let's switch off the legend, we don't need that. And now we're going to add some conditional formatting. So we want the top value here to be red, the lowest value to be a blue color, and we want the first and the last values to be black. Okay, now you can use any colors you want here. This is just really showing you a template for how to add it, to build it up. So let's go now and look at the measure we've created for conditional formatting. So the measure is exactly the same as before. We want to identify the highest, the lowest, the first date in the range, the last date in the range. So that's the same as what we did for the measure that's given us the trend. But the switch statement is slightly different. Now if it's the maximum value, the minimum value, the first date in the range or the last date in the range, rather than return the OEE percentage, we want to return a color. And that color is going to be used to drive the conditional formatting of those little bars, those little dots. So first of all, we've just used blue, red, black and black. Now you can use a hexadecimal in here. So if we want to use black in here, we could use this, I think it's FF, is it? I can use that. I think it's either FF, all the F's are all the zeros, I forget which it is. But you can use hexadecimal, but I'll just use black. Just for ease for just now. So if it's the first value, if it's the highest value, we're going to return blue, lowest value is going to be red, black for the first and black for the last value. Okay, so that is what we're going to return using this particular measure. So just so we can see that in action, let's apply it to this table here. So I'm going to go into this table and we're going to go to conditional formatting. We're going to go to this value here, the font color, and we can see if I use this field value, we can see that that's black, that's blue because it's the highest, that's red because it's the lowest, and that's black because it's the first value. Okay, so we can see that working in the table. Now what I need to do is figure out how to apply it to this value here. Now this takes a little bit of a cheat really, or a workaround. So what we actually need to do is we can't apply conditional formatting directly to the values that are on a line graph. So if I go into the data labels here, not the data labels, it is the shapes, yeah. If I go into the shapes here, we can see that there's no option here, the marker color, there's no option to actually add, there's not an FX option here to add some conditional formatting to these labels here. However, what you can do is you can convert this into a column chart, and if we get rid of the OEE percentage just for a second and go into the data colors, we can see we do have an option here to conditionally format the color of each one of these bars here. So if I go in here, go to field value, go into OEE, and we can see that we can use a conditional formatting measure that we set up to determine the color. First, last, highest, lowest. I mean, that's not great blue at all, but you can see the option here. So let's switch back over to a line chart. So just press the line chart button there, and we do need to make sure that we add back in the percentage OEE. So just make sure that's added back in there. And we can see, once we switch off the data labels for the percentage OEE, let's just make sure that they're off. Yep. So we can see that it's kept the actual conditional formatting on these dots here. So a little bit of a workaround, but it's succeeded in showing us exactly what we need. The first, the last, the highest and the lowest values have all got different colours. And all you need to do if you want to change the colours, so let's go for example, if we want to go into this conditional formatting and we decide that actually the highest value, we want that to be black as well, we're not interested in it being blue. We can see that only the lowest value, so there's a little bit of an indication that that's the highest value, but it's not using a colour, so we're really focused on this as being the lowest value here. Okay, so hopefully that's going to help you to understand how we can use a little bit of DAX to add a little bit of extra information, a little bit extra customization options to a line chart. And if you like this video, then please give it a thumbs up and a like. I'd appreciate that a lot, it'd help me out. And if you want to subscribe to the channel and keep up to date with the latest videos, I release one more or less every week, then click the subscribe button and click the wee bell and you'll get a little notification every time I release a new video. Thanks again for listening, and I'll talk to you in the next video.